All right, welcome to the podcast. I am hanging out with JP Pedhirney. How you doing, JP?
Very good. Thank you for having me, Mark.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, VP of Culinary Operations at the Concorde Entertainment Group. So, walk me through a day in the life of the VP of Culinary Operations.
It'd be hard to walk through a day, as every day is completely different than the next. But a lot of it stems from it's really generally total oversight of everything that is exciting happening in the company. And we have over 1,000 plus employees, and relatively close to that would be half would be kitchen staff, so maybe close to 500 kitchen staff, and with over 20 brands, and there's menu changes happening, there's new concepts being built, there's new locations, there's things breaking down, there's initiatives that we're doing in the community. So it really is kind of like the day drives my day, and it's connecting with all of those priorities and responsibilities on a day-to-day basis to make sure, most importantly, that everybody is getting what they need, and the ultimate vision of what we're trying to do is being accomplished. So,
right.
Yeah.
So you're one of those unicorns who you kind of knew early on in life that you were interested in being a chef.
Yeah.
So what was it about the kitchen that intrigued you? Because I do talk to a lot of chefs, and I'm fascinated because I've actually never worked in a kitchen. So when I look at a kitchen, I see this like absolute chaos, you know. But then what comes out of a kitchen is typically just so beautiful, or so delicious. And so I'm always interested in when I look at it and I see like, oh my God, like that seems crazy. When other people look at it, they're like, oh man, I want in, let's go. Yeah. But did you have growing up, did you have like a specific memory? Like, did you cook with your grandma? Like what was it that really got you interested?
I like to eat, I like to eat. It was funny, in kindergarten, they do the hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Yeah. And I said hey, I said I was 1,000 feet tall, and I wanted to be a chef because I want to eat and give my friends all the treats, right? And I loved sweet candies. I loved all sorts of stuff, and you'd always relate that to that. And loved going out to restaurants with my parents. Didn't matter what it was, that was always a big night. Yeah. And it was like going to Earl's, old school, and you'd have the open kitchens and you'd see everything going on. And it was I remember asking my dad just one night, a couple questions. He knows nothing about restaurants or anything. I don't even think he would remember this, but just kind of there's a chef, and then he has cooks that he would do, right. And tell them what to do, and that's how that works, And
see, dads back in the day could never say I don't know. They always had to answer whatever question. So your dad's just bullshitting. He's like, oh yeah, there's a chef, and then there's other people, and
and it's a very vivid memory to me. But that kind of as I matured and started going to high school, I think the drive always was in school to go to university,
right?
Do that, and so that was kind of the goal, because, you didn't really know much. You're not taught that kind of stuff in school of hey, these are the outside of careers. It's the academics, right?
It's funny though how that is. It just seems like such a missed opportunity. There's so many options that they don't even get discussed. You know what I mean?
No. No, I say that to my wife sometimes. We were walking down the Bow River, and you see the search and rescue team zipping down on the boat, and they just look like the coolest guys ever. Yeah. And you're that looks like a sweet job. They're just hanging off the side. And I'm I wish somebody told me that was an opportunity. You know? So yeah, every chef, I kind of in high school ended up just picking up a job washing dishes, because I had to pay for car insurance, right. So for my little 88 Jeep YJ, and that was my introduction to a kitchen, a little cafe that was, doing brunch, and it was kind of like they had a little grocery store at the same time as well, and it was really nothing special, and got into it, and then I got hooked, and I just loved that environment. So
you mentioned that you had an experience in New York City that kind of like, what was it, sealed the deal, you said. So what happened in New York that you're like, okay, this is what I'm doing?
So I worked for a restaurant group, Joey's, well known, and I moved up the ladder there and got to a good position where was engaged in supporting some openings to train, was running a kitchen under one of the chefs there, and they do an annual like chef trip, and this one was to New York City to cook at the James Beard House with a group of the chefs, and I was asked to be able to attend that trip. So I got to go with Chris Mills, who is like a celebrated Canadian chef that was running and runs the company at that time, and we were cooking at the James Beard House. It's like a big honor for a chef to get asked to do that, so we were all like assisting him.
Yeah.
And so they like, flew us in, and Chris gave us kind of like projects every day to like go out and kind of dine at this restaurant on the nights that we weren't doing the event.
Okay, fine.
Yeah,
I will. Yeah.
For sure. And that was part of the experience, was to learn all of that. And so we got, and like you'd be given an envelope and you were told like, this is where you're going. Like, and you're like a little group. So a group of 4 of us were sent to Daniel Boulud, a really celebrated restaurant there. And Daniel Boulud was there. We did our dinner, and then he took us back to the kitchen and did and this is like a France style kitchen, like the tall hats. And he walked us through, and it was just like the vibe was just like they're like speaking French and making these incredible dishes, and chef, and like it is just electric, right? And the food was outstanding, and we kind of had multiple experiences of that. Then we cooked at the James Beard House that night, and it was just a beautiful thing. And I got back to Calgary, and I was like, this is like, that experience is what I want the rest of my career to be. And eventually made the decision to leave the company and kind of go and start learning that way, right?
Yeah. So you mentioned Joey's,
yeah,
and I always think of Joey's and Earl's.
Yeah.
And I'll put a third one in there that you might spit your beer out, so I'll wait till you swallow. But I put McDonald's in that category too. In that, people that I meet that are really like good at something, if that makes sense. I can see they're passionate, but I can see that they have a structure and a discipline to them, have often worked for one of those 3 companies. And so how important was that for you to get that experience with Joey's?
It was incredibly important. And I notice it much more now than I did, back then and when I left. There's the structure of like how things should be organized and how, like just streamlining things. But Joey's is like people management. Like they highly focus on the management of people. How do you talk to people? How do you like that people are the number one thing. Like that is, like that's food to an extent, but really it's all about the people. Like you're sitting down and having one-on-one conversations, and then someone's listening to you doing those conversations, and then they're giving you feedback on how to do that conversation better. Like it's, and so you really learn that, and then you learn the importance of like growth from, spreading out. Like I just through some helping just being a trainer and opening up some of the restaurants in like Winnipeg and Seattle and Edmonton and stuff. You just learn like how to do a proper opening, and all the structures of that. Right. So, when I first initially left and kind of started getting into higher end restaurants, like it was kind of like I shut that door and was like, I'm kind of embarrassed of that stuff, which I'm like, hey, I fully have embraced the idea that like, those skill sets are the ones that I use the most now, actually.
Yeah, totally. Actually, I read a book. I could tell you which one it is. I can't. The Power of Habit. I'm pretty sure it was that one.
Yeah.
But they mentioned Starbucks in that as well, in terms of like just the training, and just something that people don't overlook, because I think it's just easy and popular to kind of shit on franchises sometimes.
Yeah.
But you mentioned there like the social skills, like and in today's world where there isn't as much necessarily like community, we'll say, in a lot of situations. That book stands out to me because they were talking about how, these people that had went through the Starbucks training program, they learned how to socialize. They learned how to actually interact with people and how to react to situations that came to them. Because if you're a Starbucks employee, someone might yell at you because their coffee isn't, to the perfect temperature or whatever. And you don't necessarily know how to react to that. So they train you to do that. And so there's such an important component to the training programs that these big companies have. Yeah. That people don't realize. Like they're socializing, generations of people. And I'm sure, like you said, when you look at it in hindsight, it's like, oh wow, not all, but a lot of the things that you draw from is from that experience, right?
Yeah, totally. And even the socializing aspect, like I can relate to that, because I remember Joey's just being like, the challenge always is like, I think being a leader, like the fear is just talking to a group of staff. Like, we do something called like a pre-shift every single day. And it's like standing in front of your kitchen crew, whether it be 4 people or 20, and addressing them like, hey, this is tonight. Like, this is like, we got to get this done. We got this many covers. This VIP is in, and, it's going to be a grind, or it's going to be this, and like getting them motivated. But like, I've noticed just how many, young people struggle just being able to address, their team, and like those are some of the skill sets that you have to like learn, is to be able to speak to a group of people if you want to lead. And there's no other restaurant group or restaurants, like, because when I went into fine dining, it was like, it's just like food, like perfection and all that stuff. And there was never any of those soft skills, that were ever, worked with. And so you would just see these kitchens just like flipping over people and stress and like, disorganization, because like people literally, you could see it. You were like, they don't know how to lead this, like they're super talented,
but they just expect people to like figure it out. They can't. They don't know how to articulate it. They don't. And that's the thing, is like, again, like I've talked to tons of people that that have had their experience. Whether like Earl's is another particular one, but just consistency and just like. But you can almost, when someone says, "Oh yeah, I've worked at a Joey's or I've worked in Earl's," you can almost like, it then becomes obvious, just the way that they're able to articulate themselves, the way that they focus on. There's a level of professionalism, consistency, and all those sort of things, So
100%.
Yeah, no, I think those are huge. You went to SAIT, right?
Culinary. Yeah.
So I've been lucky enough. I met, this probably would have been before, or you would have went there before, but Michael Ellemeyer is one of the people that kind of leads that program now. So I've been lucky enough I met him, I think 3 years ago, and we've become good friends, but talked a lot about that program with him, and a lot of what you said kind of echoes what he said, which is it's such an amazing school. So for you, what was your experience with SAIT, and why was that such a cool opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, SAIT, like, I went back. I unfortunately wasn't there when Michael Ellemeyer was there. Like, he's a legend. He's a wonderful teacher, and he's so involved in the community too. Like, he stops by some of the restaurants sometimes just to say hi to us. It's incredible. But so it was a lot more old school when I was there. But I loved school. It's like, I love when you go into like a kitchen that's got like 60 students and all these stations going on, and there's like just like burners and pots and different instructors like going, and it's like it's a vibe, and like you have your practicum test where it's like you gotta do your menu, and like there's 20 cooks doing a 3-course menu to present to your like teachers for your final grades, and like everyone's going in and you got to plan, and things like everyone needs to use the blender, and there's only 2 blenders in the kitchen, and then that's when like the action starts happening, right? And the pots and pans clanging, and like the just the competition, but like it's just like all the things that you would expect to kind of be in a scenario like that I always like thoroughly enjoyed. So
again, you described that, and I think of the chaos of it, but it
is chaos. Yeah,
absolutely. So maybe you could put this into context, because anytime I talk to Michael, he's slightly modest. So he's a master chef.
Yeah, he's like one of 3 in Canada.
Right. So put into perspective, because I don't think a lot of people understand what that means. Like how hard is that to become a master chef?
It's incredibly hard. Like, I mean, it's the time dedication. Like, just as like, I don't know if he remembers this, but we were like, I ran a restaurant called Muse, and he would practice like making baguettes for his master chef class, and just like come and like drop some off to our restaurant or whatever.
Really?
Like, just to like give them to people, because he had to just like keep making them over and over and over to like, and we were just like thrilled by it. But I mean, I don't know, like it's one of 3 in Canada. I mean, if you take all the chefs, like there's got to be thousands of restaurants in a city, let alone, that across the country. And then just to say that 3 of those are masters of their craft, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's exclusive. That's incredible, you know? And, it's hard to get. It's time consuming for sure. Yeah.
And I just, when you talk about SATE, it's just the idea that someone like that is helping to run that program. It's this program's in good hands. You know what I mean? Absolutely. And he's so incredibly passionate. Actually, Vikram Vij, who is a chef in Vancouver, they're actually really close friends. And I was reading Vikram's biography, and so when Vikram, I think they worked at, I can't remember I want to say Gibson's, but I could be wrong. It was a restaurant in Vancouver that they worked at together. And when Vikram left to kind of start his own thing, Michael would, on his way to work, I remember he would drop his wife off. This is in the book. He'd drop his wife off at work, and then he'd have a couple hours to kill. So he would go to Vikram's and like help him for a couple hours before going to. But he's just like, that's just the guy. Yeah. That's just who he is. Hey.
Oh, for sure.
It's awesome. You mentioned Muse. So you worked at Muse. Where was that? Was that Kensington?
Kensington.
Okay, I was trying to visualize where that was. So okay, so maybe, what are some of the more memorable kitchens you've worked at? Like when you look back at your career to date.
Yeah, Muse was definitely one of them. But I spent some time in Chicago doing some staging. Blackbird and Guilt Bar were some of the outstanding ones that I got to spend time in. And, Blackbird was a Michelin star kitchen.
Wow.
And a lot of fun, really good, led by an individual. There was a part of a group called like One Off Hospitality. They had like multiple, like a VEC. Have you been to Chicago at all?
Yeah, a couple times, yeah.
So have you been to the Publican? Or
no, I suck. I the only good restaurant I've probably ever been there was my cousin is in like the food industry, so I just kind of defer to him. He brought me to, so this is where I came up with the name Gibson's. It was in Chicago. Gibson's is a steakhouse.
Yeah. And
that was like a wicked experience for me. But so I'll have to write all these names down so next time I go. But
so multiple really cool one-off concepts.
Right.
And he was just like, he's a really good leader. Like, he is just cool. He always is thinking about his staff, like he would always have like a room full of cases of like PBRs, right? Where, you know, at the end of the night, like it was for the cooks. So like we would just open up a case and fill a sink full of ice and just like throw in PBRs awesome. And shut down the kitchen with like music blaring. And like after a really long day, and then we just kind of like, and that would be for like, hey, like I always want you guys to be doing well. And even just like I ran, like I was a stagiaire, I was like, you're nothing in the kitchen. But after I was done my kind of like staging time there, he, you know, wanted me to meet him at a taco shop, and I met him with the sous chef from Blackbird, and he introduced me to like Mario Batali and like these really big chefs that were in town. He's like, yeah, just come hang out and have some drinks. Like, I mean, now that Mario Batali has got a bad reputation, the story's not as good, but you know, it was good. So he was a great leader, and like I learned a lot being in that environment, you know, and doing something at a high level, being a good leader. And then Muse was another, totally notable as a lot of the cooks, like this renegade group of chefs, cooks that started working there. And that was kind of like my real first executive chef role on my own, nobody above me. Yeah. So it was like, I just started with like, I remember like these two cooks is Garrett Martin and like Mackenzie Pavka. And this kitchen then grew, and adding on all these chefs coming into work as we kind of performed. But those guys are guys that I have worked with since. Yeah. You know, like, so Mackenzie works in Concorde now. He's one of our like brand chefs. Oh, wow. Garrett Martin grew to be a culinary director, and he opened up Major Tom. You know, he just left to go, he's going to do his own thing coming up here. But so many staff, like we just became this super tight group that they're like family to me now, you know, and like, it was just such a wicked experience. Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. So I was asking about mentors in business here. So it was Al Jessa. That was that's from Joey's. From Joey's. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, he's like the early on, like when I go back and I think a lot of things that, you know, he's the one that led like, hey, we're going to be like a company that's going to develop leaders. Like that's like restaurants. Yeah, sure. Like we know how to do that. We're going to develop leaders. And so kind of being a part of that process and working and being in the forums that he would, you know, put us in to understand how to be a leader. And he invested, like the company invested in being like these elite leadership programs they would put us in. And we would go outside the restaurant in a different city, and like for days on end, like 8 a.m. till, you know, 11 o'clock at night, you know, we would work with leadership coaches on all sorts of wild things. Yeah. Like they did one thing where it's like called Unleashing Yourself. And like they made you stand up in front of like, there was 100 of us, and they made you stand up in front of these people, and you had to sing like a nursery rhyme, like you're a death metal band. And you weren't allowed to leave the stage until like they felt that like you unleashed yourself. So I had to do like twinkle, twinkle, little star, and like you're like rolling around on the floor, right? But it's like to get you to be able to public speak, right? And like get through all that stuff, and then like a lot of things that he would just kind of teach me about, or just like say to us, like just about, you know, like when you see something wrong and like you're like gut feeling like someone's uniform, like, and you're kind of annoyed and you don't want to say anything, and like that annoyance is right there. It's like that's the time, like you have to do that now. Like that is the, you know, that's the feeling telling you got to go do that, right? And like those were things that, you know, have stuck with me, and I like that form, you know, really I think gave me an upper edge on a lot of those things that are around today. So, and I think that's like just what you just said there, but then also just when you were talking about your experience in Chicago, where you're like, you said you're it's called a stage, right? Stage, yeah. So what's a stage? Stage is like an intern, but it's an unpaid, it's an unpaid position. Right. Yeah. So, you know, you're talking about, you know, how Al was creating leaders, and then how as a stage, you know, this person was, you know, talking to you even though you were a quote unquote nobody.
But how important are those impressions to how you now treat your team? Like when you're talking to someone who's they're just fresh into the industry or whatever, like does it make you kind of really stop and think, okay, like this is my opportunity to create an impression with this person? Or how did those situations in your life kind of impact the way you do your job?
Well, I think it's more like even those who we work closely with, it's like making sure that, you do notice, the things that are going on. I think it also makes me realize, as like we talk about, we're going into Toronto and you start to get split up, how can you keep that feel? Like I definitely felt when I was running, like Bridgette Bar, when there was a little bit more connection, it was really easy to get connected with people.
Yeah.
And I think now I get more angst when I'm not as connected with 500 people, or not being able to notice, like you ask their name, right? And you meet so many people and you see me, and then you're like, I got to remember this name. And then you see them again and you're like, ugh, and so I think, it's a constant challenge reminder of like, those things are the most important.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So then you mentioned Brad Morrison and Victor Choi.
Yeah.
So Brad specifically, what?
Yeah, like I mean Brad and Victor. So Victor, president of Concorde, and Brad, COO. They are the ones that have challenged me on like the product and like really just you kind of like making you push your boundaries and see things kind of differently, right?
Yeah.
Like all the brands that we've created, like when we go in, like they're heavily involved in that curation of that, the very initial inception of it. And, it's a lot of challenging, like Brad will be like, hey, like, what do you think of putting this on the menu? And you kind of like go, oh, I don't know, and you have to stop and think, and then you challenge yourself to do it, and they become items that are like extraordinarily successful. And their eye for detail on the room and like the way things should feel. And like I remember Victor, he likes to have places with a lot of energy and like a lot of people, and seen and be seen but relaxed. And like you walk into like when you go up to Major Tom or Bridgette Bar, it's not like tables are spread way out from each other and it's quiet, and kind of sterile. It's like you're going to go up there and it's a high-end experience, but it's like loud and people are having fun. Right. And like, a lot of chefs that come from like a fine dining world disagree with that. I think they want it to be very controlled, very like they have a romanticized feeling of like, it's all about the food and this and all this. And, so when you initially kind of worked with Victor, it'd be like, let's get this full of people, let's pack it, and I remember just being like, why though? And I remember him saying like, once you lose that, you can never get it back. Like, once you lose the vibe, it's so hard to get back.
Right.
And, that's always stuck with me. And it's always been that push now. Like I feel that now. I want those places to have that energy. It's so much fun, like sitting in, when I go up to Major Tom as a customer, or if I'm in Bridgette as a customer, like you notice that excitement.
So how does a guy, because he's been in the industry for a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's so cool to see, like, so obviously still that passion, but he's got this context of, okay, and a track record for like, hey, I know what I'm doing. Yeah. But still this like desire to kind of push the envelope and kind of like see a vision for like what could be. Because I would imagine most people in his position or in their positions would be more of like trying to maintain a status quo and being like, let's just keep the shit going that's working. You know what I mean? This
works.
Yeah.
I think both him and Brad are just, they get, I think they would get bored of that, like they're very passionate about, like Brad, outside my office, there's a bunch of cookbooks of places that, I was recently eating at, and it's kind of like, hey, like I've really find this stuff interesting. Like they're always excited about stuff, they're always excited about what's happening. And I think they always kind of want to have that new experience, So, that's the one thing about Concorde that makes, I think, us great is that push from the very top to always be evolving, always be unique. Like,
I love that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned 2 books. One was Kitchen Confidential, which I'm proud to say I just read. I'm late to the party.
Yeah.
I think that was out 30 years ago, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But again, the reason I was reading it was I've never worked in a kitchen, but I really enjoyed watching Anthony Bourdain's doc or like shows on like CNN and stuff like that. Like I was really interested. He was very articulate, and he just had a way of expressing himself that I thought was really obviously special and unique. Yeah. So I wanted to get a sense of, okay, what is this book all about? It's a little bit of obviously kind of a like, not an expose per se, but it's kind of like, here's what it's like in a kitchen. So how accurate is that in terms of, is that kind of what's happening, or have we evolved from there, or where are we at?
Definitely evolved. Yeah. Like that's, I would say that's like kitchens in the 70s, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And, where you're probably smoking cigarettes back there, right? Like
there's a cigarette in my potatoes. That's because I was smoking a cigarette.
Yeah. And I would say too, like those are like, like I think that's cooks. I think the profession of a chef, cooking, and just restaurants in general has evolved the perception of it. I think there was a time where it was kind of the underbelly of everything,
right?
And, it was not like a well celebrated trade at all. Right? Yeah. So I think it then attracted, a certain type of behavior that, no one cared and no one, and that's what it was. Right. Yeah. So, definitely evolved. Yeah.
So does it still attract though the same, like, I'm stereotyping or generalizing here, but I feel like, what one of the things I got from the book is that sometimes a kitchen is full of people that would define themselves as misfits, right? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so that's always what I thought was fascinating about a kitchen is here you have all these people who define themselves as misfits, or, but collectively what they're able to do. Like, and I'm just like, like they're literally turning chaos into order, which I always find fascinating. So is that aspect still the same? Like, are the people that are drawn to kitchens, could they still, and I'm generalizing, of course, but is it people who maybe, don't necessarily, they just feel comfortable there where they might not feel comfortable somewhere else?
Yeah, I think, well, kitchens now, the type of person that I would consider like come to like kitchens, like it's a creative place.
Right.
I don't know. Like I always found it like, it's like restaurants in general, like we're the cool kids, like to, like you, when you go there, you're into records and music, you're into like, you're obsessed about, wine and food and cocktails, and, you're obsessed with socializing, and, you don't want to like go to like work. Right. And do that. Like you want work to be part of the things that you like doing, and that's like having fun, right? And travel, you like culture, experience, like those are the type of people that I would say are into it now. Like maybe back then, like you'd be considered a misfit if you don't want to go to work. You know.
But I like the term, like you said, obsessed. Like I think that's what it is, because I think, and again, I'm the outside looking in. I'm like, I think you have to be obsessed on some level to enjoy that day in and day out, right? Like there's just a little bit about you that is like obsessed with, again, I've talked to chefs. It's just so funny. I'll talk to someone, hey, like, what have you been doing lately? And I remember one time this guy's like, Oh man, I woke up in the morning. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was just thinking about like he just had these ingredients in his head, and he just had to go and figure it out. And so he just like sat in his kitchen for an hour
crazy.
at like 3 a.m. And I'm like, cool, man.
Nice.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And God bless it. I love that people like that exist, right? Because I'm I like eating. So so let's talk a little bit about the Concorde Group, because that is, I think, way more of a. It's just it's a crazy group. Like the vision that you guys have, and how you're able to realize it, I think is super unique. So maybe just describe to me what the Concorde Entertainment Group is. Like, what are their properties?
The properties, well, it's a hospitality, and I say this, like, it's hospitality and entertainment, you know, and I think that's a huge differentiator from what other restaurant groups are, is like Concorde Group does restaurants, but we do also do entertainment. So, like the big Wild Horse tents during Stampede with concert shows, you got like the Palace Cedar, you know, what we'll do at National 10th, like, that's their background, you know, is doing those types of things. So there's that, and then there's restaurants, right? So notable brands for sure, like National, but Bridgette, Model Milk, Pigeonhole, Sky 360, Lulu Bar, Major Tom, Barbarella, Goro and Gun, Lonely Mouth, Clive Burger, Palomino, forgive me if I forget anyone, 00, Surfy Surfy.
Wow.
It's a large, diverse. We have catering. You know, we'll have like a drop and go program called Boardroom. You can like order sandwiches from your phone and have it dropped off at your office. Like, there's these. It's just super diverse. You know, it's a dream to kind of work in. Yeah, you're always doing something different. So,
well, it's a dream, but like, just I'm looking at it from a logistics perspective, because the company that I do, sort of my day job is Alberta beer festivals, right? So, you know, I always look at things from a logistics perspective, because festivals are all about logistics, right? So like, even just what you're describing, like, I'm trying to think, how the hell do you even, like,
it's
you know,
crazy, right?
And even like how you separated restaurants and entertainment, but then talking about how, you know, Victor it's almost like the restaurants also need to have entertainment. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're not totally separate.
Yeah, Sweet Loretta. How could I forget that? Right
Sweet
down the
Loretta,
street. Yeah, you know, like, there's this little restaurant in the front. Then it's like DJ, disco balls, entertainment in the back, right?
Yeah.
So
insane. Yeah. And so how long have you been with them? Sorry?
Coming up to 9 years.
9 years.
Yeah.
What did you... Where did you start? What was your position when you first started?
Yeah, I started as a sous chef and opened up with Pigeonhole.
Okay.
When it first opened up. And I was working a little bit at Model Milk as well. And so my wife and I, we departed from Muse, and we're kind of like in between jobs, and I was like applying with a couple people and notable groups, and then Justin Lebo sent me a text and was like, hey, like, you know, we're working on a new project, and, you know, Brad and Victor have some, you know, new concept ideas, they would like to connect with. And so we ended up connecting, and I kind of just started off helping Justin and that team that was with Garrett and them opening up that restaurant. And then I kind of supported with National a little bit. And then kind of like really made my stamp when we opened up Bridgette Bar. So that was like my first kind of, all right, this is what you're going to be doing. And so I opened up that one as the executive chef.
Yeah.
And then, you know, then we did Lulu Bar next. And then I kind of started spreading out and helping with some other brands, and then just started snowballing from there. Yeah.
And so where does the group span to? So we're Calgary, obviously, but like, what's the...
So now just, finished up Canmore, Bridgette Bar in Canmore.
Yeah.
So that opened in May, and made it through the summer. It's crazy. And then we're in Toronto now. So opening up in the Well, 3 brands, Lulu, Bridgette, and National. And Lulu is going to be the first one to open in January. So we'll be in.
So it's funny because Bridgette from here, the original Bridgette Bar is like a block from here.
Yeah.
So what is it about like that one specifically? Because it's interesting with how many brands you have. You know, is there a certain moment where you think, okay, this one is special? There's something different about this one.
Yeah.
Like, what was it about Bridgette? Because you worked there a little bit more intimately. So what was special about that one?
I feel like Bridgette was the room and the concept and the leadership team all became like it was one perfect storm of like a good one, you know, where the branding work, like the work that Mark Rimmer and Brad and Victor did on the branding package itself was incredible. The room that Frank Architecture put together was incredible. The bar program and front of house management program, like John Molyneux and that team put together. And then the kitchen, you know, we just wanted really relaxed food, like, you know, a lot of technique that would happen, but not explained to the customer. That all just happens in the back, like the wood fire, and just we wanted to be like all like, let's just do like really good local product. Let's make it a bar. I think Brad coined the term. It's like, you know, a chef driven bar.
Right.
You know, like that's what we called it. Like it's a bar where the food's like chef forward, right? And we wanted it to just be super approachable, and it really resonated with Calgarians, you know, and it's resonated with the residents in Canmore. Like it's just it's a brand that's super approachable, and a lot of fun. So and that foundation, because we've never had like anyone in the back house management team ever quit, you know, like they've all grown and helped and they've moved up in Concorde, but no one's ever just been like, hey, I'm done working here, you know. And it was such a good culture, front and back house, that it's allowed that brand to expand out with the same people to be able to replicate the same thing, right? So
that's I'm going to guess a pretty unique situation. Like when
it
you
is,
say but when you can have the same people that understood the culture from the beginning, who are then able to kind of like spread that culture. Yeah. Because that to me has to be the hardest thing about, you know, a restaurant is like, how do you create a positive culture, but then how do you maintain that positive culture, right? Because typically, or I would think so, there can be an opportunity for restaurants to be like quite transient in terms of their staff. So then culture is like very hard to maintain. Whereas like you guys seem to have been able to really. What's the secret sauce there?
I think the secret sauce is the ability that everyone feels ownership in all these unique products that we have, like restaurants. Everybody, like when it comes to like Major Tom and like what Britt Thompson and Garrett Rotel did up there, you know, they felt so much ownership of that. You know, everyone is like gets stuck to, you know, the work that they put in. They're like, it's not like, hey, we design everything and, you know, here's your menu, here's your drink list, here's your wine list. You have to buy this stuff. Like, here you go. Now go operate that. It's like they're a part of drafting and building and putting together the intellect into that, right? And so people become very bought in, and they're attractive, exciting. It becomes attractive and exciting because there's so many multiple people working on things. Nothing is like, its dynamic is so much more. It's broad. It's not like one dimensional. It's just you know, everyone's just throwing in these random curveballs that are like, oh, that's really cool, and then it just generates that excitement. And that goes down to the staff. And
so what's interesting with that though is like, because I love the fact that like there's like, you know, there's that input, but sometimes that input can kind of like drive you off course. Like, so like you have to have like that vision from the top, allow input, but still be like, okay, but this is the direction we're going.
Well, then that's where, you know, Brad and Vic come in, you know, like there's something that's like, that's not going to happen. No, it's like and they're not afraid to tell people that something's not good, and I think that when we do menu development, or if it's bar development, or if it's like a staff uniform, like we get together as a group. Like we'll have, John Molyneux and Brad, Victor, Stephen Phipps, the beverage director. We all, like, if we're doing menus, like we'll all bring out like a dish before we open up a concept, and like we all eat it. Like, no, that's not good enough. Like, okay, try again. Like we do all these sorts of tastings over and over and over and over until it's like, that is like craveable. That's so good. That's like, nothing like kind of gets through that filter. It's not just like, there's so many layers of checking to make sure we're so inspired about what we're doing. Yeah.
Well, and I think, like, so you guys obviously figured out the balance between, you want the input, but if something isn't good, it's like, put your ideas out there. Yeah. We have a vision. If it's not, if that doesn't work, like people are comfortable, expressing themselves, and if their ideas don't stick, they don't feel,
Well, yeah, I think,
there's a balance there.
Yeah. And I mean, we have to be comfortable with, like, there's an ego check, right?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
You have to be comfortable with, like, and maybe it's good, but maybe it's just not the direction, that's also part of it. And I think everyone has learned that, like, feedback is good.
Yeah.
Criticism is good. Like, it's growth. That is like, we're not holding anyone back. We're just asking it to be better, or to fall in line with what the vision is, like challenges you, right?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Yeah. So
I think it's, I mean, it's either that or you're just in an echo chamber of, like, you want to be challenged. So you were talking about, if the last 5 years, and you've mentioned John Molyneux a couple of times, and I've known John for quite a long time, and really obviously loves what he does and is passionate. The last 5 years, I hate talking about COVID, but for you guys, how challenging was that time? Because you've done so many interesting things in the last 5 years, but at the same time, it has to have been the most challenging 5 years you guys could have imagined.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, COVID, I love our company and I'm proud of it, what they do, like how everyone made it through that, you know, everyone just like the hard day, I know John, when it's like, we have to lay everyone off, you know, like, and that was just like ridiculous. Like that was, I his emotion on that was,
I can't even imagine.
But everyone, it kind of like, no one was like, everyone understood, and everyone, we all were like, we're all like, this is messed, and I remember John always would write like updates, just like, hey, he'd write sometimes, like, I remember one, when it was close to Christmas, when we had to go through the second shutdown, he like wrote like a Christmas poem on like all the work that we had done and stuff. And it was just like to keep everyone motivated. So like, it was hilarious. I got to pull it out. I wish I should have brought it, 'cause it was pretty funny. And it was uplifting. And so that, and then it was like that transition where it was like, okay, we're going to open now, but like there's masks and there's this plexiglass everywhere, and, temperature checks every single day, and people calling being like, hey, like I have like a slightly runny nose. Okay, well, don't come into work. Well, now we're short staffed. And, and then that came to like, okay, we're fully open now and all these restrictions are gone, but all these people have left the industry.
Right.
And we're opening up all these new restaurants that were backlogged because of COVID, and a lot of us made it through, like that was a testament to like how much people really appreciated or wanted to stick with what we committed to with Concorde. Yeah.
So, and so at the same time, so, you're like you said, you're creating all these concepts. So before I ask you that, I was wondering, as I was making my notes, is it easier when you're a big company to get through COVID, or is it harder? Like, if you're a mom and pop restaurant, or if you're, because part of me says, yeah, but they have all these properties. They have, they can kind of like just kind of absorb things a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Whereas with the mom and pop shop, it's just like immediately impacting. What's your opinion on that? What makes it easier?
I think there's a plus and minus to both.
Yeah.
Like recalling or laying off like over 800 staff or whatever, while our HR team like producing all those letters.
Yeah.
And then recalling everyone where it's like, oh, restrictions are being moved this day, and you had to like recall, so you're writing all these recall letters, only to find out then 2 months later you're laying everyone off again, like.
Well, and that was the thing, like from just an outsider, like I'm thinking like, I don't know, does someone at the government just think like they can just press a button and like these restaurants open again? Like that was the biggest thing I was thinking. I'm like, there's like staff that needs to get hired. There's product that needs to get, because I know a couple times where I think they would, they would say you can be open on this day and they would change the date. And I'm just like, there's product that's being ruined, right? There's staff that's just sitting there. And it's just like, how many times can you do that before people are just like, screw it, You guys rode the wave.
We rode the wave. I mean, where I guess the plus side for us is that we did have all that staff sitting on the bench, so as we would create initiatives, like we did the Bridgette Bar dinners, and we started doing Lulu. We started just doing like fun Christmas kits. We started doing like seafood towers to go. Like we were throwing anything at the wall that would stick, like ramen, like sushi platters. And as like people would be buying it, you'd just be plugging people off the bench, and that was literally what you're doing. And like, I don't know, I found that because we had those resources, the human resources to do that, like it allowed us to like get really creative with all of that to try to like keep people employed as much as possible, right?
Totally. So then you come out of that, but so so nine new venues, some major renovations. So there's the resilience that we talked about, but then there's the optimism of, because I think a lot of people could look at the last 5 years and say, this isn't an industry that I, am comfortable being in. There's just so much volatility, but obviously you guys on some level you're optimists in some level. So maybe talk about some of the new projects. You mentioned the one in Toronto, and then what about it? What about, what you're seeing gives you cause for optimism?
Well, I mean, being connected with people and having people in your, I guess to describe this, right? So like during COVID, it was almost like a year and a half, close to 2 years of cooking food in an empty restaurant, putting it in a box, and like sending that out, right? And you just like literally you're just like these digital customers that you're putting this stuff in. So when it came to like Jason Kenney's like open for summer kind of thing, like we're getting rid of all the restrictions and we're opening up the first day of Stampede, and like we had Major Tom's idling ready to open, you know, and like that had to be our moment. Like we had to like flip the lights on and go. So we were doing it that day, and then we were doing Wild Horse that exact same day as well. Like the whole, and like we were just, that was our welcome back to work. But like everyone was so ecstatic to be like, hey, we're just serving people again. Like, I don't care. Like I remember that first night at Wild Horse, I was doing 00 pizza and people were just annihilated, having a great time. And like, for me, that normally would have been like, this is like just, that, but where it was like, this is so like, I appreciate this again. This is why we do this. This is like having that was like just the most important thing. And same with Major Tom, like we were going through a grind, but like everyone was like, I would rather this than that, and I understand how much we appreciate that. And that is always, I think at this point, sitting in everyone's, the back of their mind, right? Like, I think someone like, cause there was some COVID starting to happen again this fall, and someone shot out the word like, oh, they're just give me like restrictions, they're masking again. And I think everyone just was like, it just hit the bone. Yeah. So that's a huge part of the optimistic part. Like, it's just, we've seen the worst, and, you know, every day is just like, we're blessed that's where we're at, right?
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree. So outside of work, you run a lot.
Yep. Yeah.
So 50 to 70K per week.
Yeah.
So why do you run? I'm curious.
Yeah. So, I mean, I started running during COVID because gyms were, you know, shut down, and, you know, was the only access to like any type of exercise, laid off from work. There's nothing to do. Yeah. You know, not even a 1-year-old at home. You just need to get out and start. And kind of, my sister was doing it, so she should, you know, look up to her and do it. So started that, and you get that runner's kind of drug, and it sticks with you. And it's part of my daily routine now to get out there, and from a mental health standpoint, it changes the game completely. You come back with, like, you have this whole endorphin just growth, and and so it's addictive. It just love it.
I was going to ask you about that, the physical health versus mental health, because I think especially like for yourself, you work in such a, like you said, your day to day isn't, there is no day that's like the next day, right? And so I feel like in those situations, you know, doing something like your daily run gives you that structure that you might not necessarily have. So how is it that for you, how did you find that physical outlet really helping you mentally?
Well, and there's a couple things on that too. Like, you know, transitioning to this role was a big transition. Like, I'm out of the kitchen. You know, I'm not part of the daily, what I was doing for 20 years of like cooking and that physical aspect of it, right? And I didn't start to notice how much that affected me, you know, kind of being like answering emails, looking at construction designs, you know, reviewing menus, costing and stuff like that. Like, the physical stuff was going away, and it was becoming administrative stuff. So like, running has to, like, I realized that my body has to have that physical need, or I do get, like, you know, I don't feel good, you know, not happy. So it has to replace at some aspect. So it does replace a little bit of that kitchen, you know, activity.
So then, knowing that you're close with John Molyneux, how did he not convince you to start biking? Because I know, like, I was on WBN with them for years, and he's an avid biker, so he's never sucked you into the biking aspect of it.
No, he hasn't. I think he just, I think he's like, he said a couple times, but I don't have a bike, so I think he knows that, so he's not even gonna like bother. I need one now with my son being 4, and we're getting to that stage, but I do want to cycle. You know, it's kind of like, this is, he has never asked. You know?
Oh, you can't wait for him to ask, because I didn't wait for him to ask. I just told him that, because I know I was at National a couple of times when they were meeting and stuff like that. I was just like, oh, I'm just gonna join the team. But no, I think that, you know, physical activity is so important, specifically in a role that you have where there's not necessarily that structure. And that just provides you that structure, and then it also just provides you that outlet to you know, whatever it is, like you said, the endorphins or whatever, just kind of gives you that, and it gives you time to yourself too, right? Because not only your son's 4 now,
4.
You know, so you got a lot of shit, you know, kind of getting thrown at you, right? So you need that little bit of time to just kind of decompress,
for sure,
and hang out. And actually, I've talked to Michael Elmeyer a lot about that. I'm working on an app. It's called Explore 84, but he's been helping me with that. And I just think that that's such an important, because I was asking him about when he was working towards becoming a master chef, and he really approached it as if he was a pro athlete. And he's just like, that part, I have to go into the kitchen in shape mentally, physically. And I think
Totally.
that's how we should approach, our job. The more physically healthy you are, you're bringing a better version of yourself to work and to your family and stuff like that, right? So I think, a lot of people say, well, I don't have time to run. I think making time to do those things is, it's the best thing you can do for yourself, but it's actually the best thing you can do for your team and for your family, as far as I'm concerned, right?
No, I agree. I think I heard a quote, it was like from a Navy SEAL guy, and whatever his job was to like, fire off the bombs to like let the guys in, and he would just say like, hey, like every day or every time he had to go to that, like my 3 words would be like execute, 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 and then boom, and then they go in, right? But he's like, that's what I tell myself every single day now, is like when you get up though, it's like for your team behind you, it's like execute, 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 do your job, and it's for them, like you don't want to let them down, you don't want to let your work teammates down, and I find, you tell yourself physical exercise, you don't have time, but when you start investing more time in it, you start realizing how much time you do have, because your mind gets a little bit more relaxed. Yeah. You're not like feeling anxious, and you're not like, you just, everything kind of starts to sort itself out, and you're like, well, if I can't, and then, well, if I can't do it now, I'll do it at 9:00 at night, you know, like, and totally, instead of watching TV and
well, and I think of myself as a dog. I'm like, I need like that. I need to be walked every day. You know what I mean? Absolutely. And then I'm just better. I won't chew the furniture if you just walk me every day. So how long has your career been to date?
23 years.
23 years. Mm-hmm. So because you strike me as someone who's still super pumped to be doing what they're doing. Yeah. What motivates you on a daily basis? What do you get excited about when you wake up in the morning?
Well, I get excited about our job, because it's very exciting to work. Like I get excited about everything that we're doing, and I am excited about my team. I'm excited about my people. I'm excited about my family. I'm excited about, like, I just every single day I'm like, I'm blessed, and like I just, you got to fill that glass up with life. Like I always say that to like my wife, like, let's just fill the glass up. Like, let's go do this, because we need to fill the glass. We need to do that, like that constant search to be doing those things where you're getting the most out of everything. Yeah. That is, what I think about when I get up, and that's what's going to drive, or get me excited. Yeah.
Because you wake up at 4:00 in the morning, did you say?
4:00 in the morning, yeah. And
so what do you do at 4 a.m?
I start going through my emails.
Oh, you do? You're like, you get right into work?
Yeah, I'll get up, like wake up, get a coffee going. Yeah. And then we have like the chefs and we use a program called Reich for like project management. So I like love it. I'm obsessed with it. So I like go through that and just see, it kind of gives me like a lay of like what everything is going on, look at the calendar, this is what's going to go on. I'll putz around on Instagram, see what's happening, and then get ready and then go for a run and then start that day.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So you run in the morning?
In the morning, yeah.
Yeah. I like to, that's what I like to get. Yeah, I run pretty much every day, but I like to get it out of the way in the morning. I run every day, like, or bike, or my buddy Greg, who I'm doing Explore 4 with, has convinced me that I actually need to start lifting weights. So sometimes I'll substitute running with lifting weights, but I like to do it in the morning too, because then it doesn't like gnaw at you for the whole day. You know what I mean? It's just like done, and then you're good to go.
I can't do, like, at nighttime, I don't perform as well at night. Like, do you feel?
Yeah. No. It's not. But I will because I do have, it's on my must-do list every day. So I've had a few nights where I'm like sitting at home going like, yeah, it's a pretty good day. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh shit, I haven't ran. And then I got to put my gear on at like 11 o'clock, and it's just not quite as enjoyable as.
So what's the often route? Like, how are you?
I do 5K or more.
5K or more.
And so then I don't, and I never think about what route I'm doing. I just kind of let but for some reason I always need to do a loop. Like I'm like, what's wrong with my brain that like I can't not make it a loop? I don't know. Like, so, but
you gotta kind of finish where you started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm envisioning like my Strava, and I'm like, yeah, that'll be. I'm like, but no one looks at my, like, who gives a shit? But it's just like in my head. But every morning I just I don't put any thought into where my run is going to be. I'll just kind of like go. Yeah. And then as long as it's 5K or more, then I'm happy. But yeah, no, I think that especially with, like you said, with the way that you have kind of organized your life, there's a lot of, positive chaos in your life. So having that kind of daily structure, I would imagine is pretty important to you. Yeah. Cool, man. So what's next? What if there's one thing you could say that you're looking forward to, and you have a 4-year-old son, so I'm sure there's lots of things, but what's the next adventure you're looking forward to?
Look forward to his life, his adventure. Yeah.
It's like living through him, hey? Just getting to see everything again.
Like all those, I
have 2 kids, 2 girls, Yeah.
So, you kind of go through all those things that you forgot that you did when you were a kid, and you start having, you start reliving them. You're like, oh, I remember those things, And, like we just started camping this summer, and like it starts to become nostalgic, and you remember your camping trips. And so those are the things that like I look forward to just seeing, because like he gets so excited about everything that we do together. And so it's like that excitement I look forward to, and doing it with our family. I love that, seeing them grow, all those things. I can't wait.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for taking the time and sharing your story. Always cool to see what the Concorde group is up to, but just the passion and just getting kind of that insider, what is, because you hear a lot of stories about the restaurant industry, and I think there's always going to be the scary stories and the shitty things that are happening, but to know that there's optimism, and that there's people that are passionate, that are doing good stuff is awesome. So thanks for sharing that.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks.